So the main reason for starting this home server was experimentation. So a lot of these technologies I plan on installing or looking at either serve the purpose of one, convenience for myself, or two, just kind of seeing how they work fully, starting from scratch and starting from the bottom. So things like Kubernetes and Ansible, I've touched at work, but they've already had a lot of work done on them. So it's a lot of like just the initial developer setup and not actually installing these services bare bones myself. And the other is I plan on running a few small sites. So like personal blog, maybe a game server for me and my friends. Those are the main things I see as a motivation for this home server setup. What really kicked this off was getting a bonus on it. And while I've been looking at making a home server setup for a few years now, I couldn't justify the cost. Even for a cheap setup, it can become expensive really quickly. Living in an apartment right now is kind of not conducive for a home server, I've noticed. So some of the requirements I've had for this living with someone else is it needs to be quiet. Anything too loud will obviously become a bother in a very small 600 square foot apartment. Low power would also be nice just because I do not want an energy bill right now, and I can't justify having a very expensive energy bill that you see with some of these home server setups, especially with older equipment. The energy bill can really kick off really quickly. I want something with decent specs, so a little better than a Raspberry Pi, mainly because if you ever get any real traffic, a Raspberry Pi is going to quickly default on you, and it's not going to be able to handle all the network load and necessarily even the requests themselves, and something relatively affordable. So the computers I got for my home server setup were the GMKtec Mini PC N100. These ran for a cost of about $140. I believe this is about 20% off when I originally got them. For the router, I got the TMP-Link TL SG108-M2. These were running for about 40% off on Amazon, so I got it for $120. And I bought myself a few 1-foot Cat5e cables to go along with this. So this should allow. So the main two reasons why I didn't go with something like a Raspberry Pi and instead went with the N100 chip was one, the cost for what you're getting I feel like is a lot better for the N100. I can list all the specs on the screen, but the main thing for this project at least was I wanted something with an x86 architecture rather than a ARM architecture. And while I really do hope ARM starts to become a lot more popular, I feel that from what I've seen talking to a few of my coworkers that run their own setups, was there's just some issues with it and it doesn't have the same performance as x86 at the moment. So the main points for this router and why I chose it was one, the price. It was a really good price for what I feel like you were getting with 2.5 gigabits of bandwidth, and the fact that it was fanless, so I don't have to worry about it making too much noise in the apartment. One thing I didn't like about it was it's an unmanaged network, so setting up a lot of the VLANs and kind of getting into that realm of my home server won't be available for me at this point. But for the price point, I can live with that for now, and I'm mainly focusing on Kubernetes and Ansible, along with running some of my services on those platforms. In the process of me installing the Ubuntu servers on these computers, I made one mistake, and I did not make the default network card the Ethernet, and I actually used the Wi-Fi instead. So I would recommend, if you ever do this on your own, to always go with the default, because it is a little bit of a pain to reset it up or go in. And one thing I did learn from this though is how to start using the IP command. I had always used the ifconfig, but now that that's kind of dated and the documentation says to use IP, so I got to learn that a little bit, and I'll link a comment to the man page in the description. So one of the main key points I had for these servers is they all need static IP addresses, and this is more to do with the plans I have for them. Setting up the Kubernetes cluster, you need a static IP address for your control plane and for all of your nodes, so that was something very important. And the other thing was I didn't want to keep on reconfiguring my Ansible charts, so having a static IP address. And right now I'm using a Xfinity modem router combo, so that will be handling most of that. And while I don't like using it, it's the only option I have right now living in the apartment.